26, 2024. The clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember Porter.
Here.
Councilmember Middleton is absent. Councilmember Hotchkiss.
Present.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have only one item on the agenda, and this is introductory order resolution 24-27. This is the proposed title is the Clear Conscience Act. This was submitted by Kenneth Brown, who's here to discuss this with us a little bit further. Do you want to give us an overview of what inspired you to draft this? Actually, first I want to say thank you for using your right to submit legislation and being civically engaged. But beyond that, you want to describe this for me a little further?
Yeah, okay. So it all started last year when I noticed that public officials were able to, well, first let me start by, I'll just read the description. Any company with direct financial ties to or employs a sitting City of Binghamton elected official or anyone on their governmental staff will be barred from receiving any City of Binghamton funded contract and or project. It's one thing I've noticed. I tell a lot of people that I did this and they seem baffled that this isn't already a law, which isn't surprising to me that they're baffled either. But this kind of came up in the last year or so when I was starting to pay attention to local politics and how a former city council member's private company had received City of Binghamton government contracts while he was a sitting city member or sitting city council member, which just seemed like a basic conflict of interest, especially since he was on the board that would, or the legislative body that would vote on it, even if he recused himself. So I started to look into the local laws to see if there was anything that maybe was getting overlooked. And all I could find, which it looks like you guys supplied today, the Code of Ethics from the city charter, but it's vague, very vague, which seems to be the issue. And I wanted to try to maybe, I don't know if it needs to be an amendment or if it could be a new law in itself that could make it more specific to stop this type of thing from happening again in the future.
Great. Yeah, and I think all of us on city council agree that it really erodes the public trust if there is someone that's financially benefiting from the legislation that they're also voting on. And so I am in agreement with like the rationality behind what you're proposing here. And further, it's just like we do have this ethics chapter in the city charter that I think it's pretty decent, both with the penalties and like the outline. But I think the real issue that we have in the city of Binghamton is that there's a lack of enforcement around it and a lack of like transparency. So I think what you're working on right now with this piece is something that it runs parallel to a piece of legislation that I'm working on to require appointed and elected officials to do financial disclosures. And I think that will provide a little bit more transparency. And so I'm basically trying to mimic what the county does for their financial disclosures. And so I've done this a little bit of discovery. They have an ethics board that they have about 90 people that are required to do them throughout Brooke County and their government. Their ethics board is comprised of 3 different people with different political persuasions, and they go through their whole list. They just sit down on a date in April every year, go through everything, and they check for conflicts. They check if anybody hasn't submitted, and based on what they see there, if there's any red flags, they have conversations with that person. But at the end of the day, all those financial disclosures are public records, so they can be foiled. And I think that would be, I'm trying to get to a point where we are are doing financial disclosures in the city and using the ethics board at the county to review those. So I think like since we're simultaneously trying to do these things, I just wanted to give you that background of what I'm working on. And hopefully it would kind of have some synergy as to like what you're trying to accomplish here.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I think that's one, like basically the first step that needs to be done because I mean, at least for the concept of public transparency, my step after that, it doesn't really mean anything if you can't see what their finances are. But I want to make sure that it doesn't get, my request doesn't get lost in the sense that people think that that first step is all that needs to be done. Because in my opinion, that's more of just removing the mask of corruption and then not taking the next step to deal with the problem. Because it's fine to see that someone's corrupt, but it's even worse to then go on and be like, well, we told you, but you know, we're not doing anything about it. So I think, not saying that you don't want to do anything about it, but I think that that's what this RL kind of does is the next step is creates a way for maybe for it to not happen. And if it does happen, create a situation to remedy it or a way to remedy it.
Right.
Oh,
Do you have anything, Councilman Border?
yes, thank you, Ken. Thank you for this legislation because it is a good legislation. I have no problems with it either. But I also have no problem with the legislation. I just wanted to know about the certain distinct things from the legislation because it's only considering from the legislation that you would talk about the financial disclosure. That is only for what, executive and administration and council?
Yeah, so it's elected and appointed. So there's staff that's appointed, but then there's all the boards and commissions that are appointed by either the city council or the mayor or different department heads. So, but yeah, what I proposed wasn't it neglected city employees. So like
Which I don't think a city employee should, or certain city employees should be, maybe, I don't know, unless you talk about the head of the departments, maybe, because those are appointed correctly, right, from the mayor.
yeah, so
Oh.
the target is like the people that are responsible for like decision making or would be voting on something or making different rules for different departments. So I can see that we could extend it to all employees, but maybe not.
I don't,
For-
I don't recommend that.
Okay,
I don't recommend. I just feel that, you know, there's certain, well, looking at the charter, I just feel certain penalties should be more often than this is, like I said, is vague. And the penalty should be a little bit more dire
Yeah.
than what it has here. I even say that maybe I even could say maybe years in jail if that's the case, if that's me, just but that's the whole aspect of looking at it. I mean, or being fired and years in jail, that's personally.
Yeah, I think any penalty should reflect based off of what happens. I guess you could say if the way that the government enforces it upon the private sector, that same, if not more, should be enforced upon the government themselves because they're the ones that are supposed to be, you know, protecting our taxpayer money. And if they're mishandling it, I feel like that it at least deserves an equal, if not greater punishment. On the
I am
topic, sorry, go
I
ahead.
am sorry. Hi, Kenny. I'm sorry. I'm running late. How are you?
Not bad about yourself. But I was just gonna, on the topic, I know with Councilmember Hotchkiss's, what he's penning up about the financial disclosure, you were talking about how you wouldn't want that to go on to all government employees of Binghamton. In regards to mine, I guess that's an area where I haven't fully figured out that because I've been thinking about that myself. Should every single employee be affected? I mean, I want to say yes, that they should be banned from it also just because just because maybe they're a lower level employee, they're not upper management, they can still talk, they can still, grease, grease a few opinions, if you will. So I think that's something that we'd have to obviously figure out the exact language. Because I definitely, one thing, don't want this to go in and be left also vague so that it can be easily manipulable, but. So that's, I guess I'll have to say on that.
Would you, I mean, with both of you, could you consider maybe this Clean Conscious Act and your financial disclosure being one whole legislation? To make, to combine it as one, to make it show, so that it also makes it so that the charter won't be vague.
Mhm.
It'd be right, direct to the point, and we fix a charter and we have something set in the legislation. So
And
that's my question is, are you willing to have both that financial disclosure and this Clean Conscious Act as one?
I'm open to it. I don't know how necessary it would be if we're just passing both anyways. It could make it be kind of branded as like a larger ethics reform package that we're looking to move forward with, but I'm open to it. I don't know how necessary it would be.
Yeah, I'm open to the idea of it. I just don't want it to be one of those things, like I said before, where stuff gets lost in the process. Because I mean, we see, not that this is Congress, but we see with Congress when they start to lump everything together. Someone decides to throw this in here, this in there, and then by the end, that whatever you want to call it act isn't even about what it was originally supposed to be about in the first place. And I think that's the only worry I would have really is it getting watered down or getting lost in the process.
I mean, oh, sorry.
No, no, it's okay.
You sure? you're
Yeah,
good?
go.
I mean, I understand that, and that's why I'm thinking the wording of it, the wording shouldn't change. There should be something like, maybe each step or some kind of subset of what that is with all the things, the wording that can be placed from the Clean Conscious Act as well as the financial disclosure. I mean, I perfectly find it. Like, I agree. I don't want it to be watered down. So that's why I'm going, just having a clear wording on what it is for that, just for that, for both legislations to be combined. But I do understand what you're saying, and that could be a concern, yeah.
No, yeah, that's and I think that's actually, I like what you said about making sure that they're like bullet point, that it all gets spelled out clearly, because that's like I was saying, I don't want it to be vague. And I think I mean, I'm not going to be upset if it takes 6 months to a year to get something passed, as long as it gets done correctly and well and benefits the people and not, the people that are getting paid by the people. That's all I really care about, as long as it gets the job done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think, yeah, I think this has been like a pretty good kickoff. Do you guys have any other discussion?
No, I am, bear with me, I'm off, but yeah, I will look at it and get my opinion to you later.
Yeah.
So,
I don't have any questions. To me, it's a good legislation. I find it good.
I know.
All right, thank you. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kenny.